Community Redevelopment Agency regular meeting. Well, this is the special meeting, right? Special meeting. This Tuesday, April 25th. Roll call, please.
Board Member Timothy.
Here.
Chairman Desume.
Here.
Board Member Charles.
Present.
Vice Chair Estimate Irvin.
Present.
Board Member Galvin. Chairman, you have a quorum to proceed.
Thank you so much. Let's please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Item for review action, Madam Executive Director.
Good evening, everyone. Tonight is the workshop for the updated 2023 North Miami CRA redevelopment plan. We have a presentation from Mr. Crowder tonight to walk you through the plan, and that way we can get feedback from the board. If there's any contributions you'd like to make, this will be coming back to you on May 9th for a resolution to adopt this plan. So we would like to take your feedback into consideration at this time so we can make any changes so you can approve at the May 9th meeting if you so see fit.
Mr. Mayor, if I may.
Yes, ma'am.
And after the May 9th meeting, does this go before the city council, to the county?
Yes, it will go before the city council. Once the city council approves it, it goes to the county, along with our interlocal agreement, just as a big package for the county, so it can all be approved at once by the Board of County Commissioners.
Do we also have to make any changes to our interlocal agreement as well? Or,
Yes.
so we're having that discussion tonight?
No, the interlocal agreement is not. The plan is the only conversation for today.
Okay.
So and just also so you know, so the city council sits as the governing body as defined by the statute. There's notices that we need to send out, the city needs to send out actually to all the taxing authorities. I've prepared those. We're going to give them to the city manager. She will send those out. There's also a publication that needs to go into a local newspaper. So there's a few steps before the city approves. The city will take it up at the May 23rd meeting because of the time frame within which these notices have to go out. So there's steps that need to be taken in accordance with the statutes as part of this process.
So will the interlocal come before us too, or does that one just kind of go as you guys see fit?
Well, it's not about us we need to have a conversation with the county because this interlocal is between the CRA and the city and the county. So once we have that conversation with the county to know what's happening in the interlocal agreement, of course, the board will be apprised of what's happening for your approval.
Go ahead,
I have a follow-up question. So the interlocal that's going to go in front of the county, what we're trying to do is we're trying to get it out by May 23rd, right?
So the county's schedule is different than the city and the CRA schedule. So we are in the series of meetings. We don't yet have a date as to when the interlocal agreement is going to go before the county. We are waiting on county staff for that.
Okay, so there's no date for
There's no
when
date.
the county is going to...
We are working with the county to do that. The very, what should I say, ambitious hope is that everything will reach the Board of County Commissioners for their July meeting. That is the very ambitious hope, so hopefully everything happens before that. So we're backtracking with those dates in mind.
Right, Vice Chair. The plan amendment by,
Name.
I'm
for the
sorry,
rec-
Kevin Crowder, Business Flair. So on May 9th would be you as a board of the CRA approving the plan or forwarding the plan really to the governing body. May 23rd would be the approval by you of the governing body of the plan as well as the amendments to the interlocal agreement, because the interlocal is between the city and the county.
Yes.
And then from there, that gets transmitted to the county, working on this timeline to make sure that we have a cushion throughout the fiscal year to targeting that July meeting at the Board of County Commissioners.
And
Okay.
Mr. Crowder, just so the CRA is also a party to that
Interlocal
interlocal agreement. So it's a
Yes.
tri-party agreement. I don't believe we even have a draft from the county yet of of the interlocal agreement. So we're going to be working with them between now and the 23rd. If we need to call a special CRA board meeting then to approve it that night before your city council meeting, we'll do that. I mean, our goal is to get this done as
To get
quickly as
done as
possible.
soon
Right,
as
that's what I wanted
Right.
to hear, the steps to make sure
Yes.
that we
Absolutely.
Yeah.
do all of
But just
our
to be
parts.
clear, on the interlocal aspect of it, that is driven by the county, and they have to
Yes.
proffer to us that document before. We don't give them something.
Correct.
So, and those are gonna be two
Yeah.
different plans that we approve, or?
There's a plan, this is the plan, the interlocal agreement is something different than it's not a
Yeah,
plan.
so we'll approve the
Yes.
interlocal before, I guess once those conversations will happen, it'll come before us as.
Yes, you're
what-
gonna see
what I
your
just wanted to-
interlocal agreement, because you're a party to it.
It will, and they will all travel together as one package to the
Yes.
county.
Yes.
Oh, okay, so the redevelopment plan that we're
Which is this.
reviewing tonight and the interlocal agreement will be one thing that goes to the county at one time through their legislative process for approval.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
And we're going to see them at two different times. So we're seeing the plan tonight and the interlocal.
Absolutely, because
whenever
we're expediting what we have control over, and
Okay.
they will forward to us what they have control over.
that- Understood, thank you.
And just full disclosure, for the board, it's been a couple weeks since, Commissioner, our commissioner over this area did reach out. We've had previous, conversation between the county in terms of the interlocal agreement, and this is when, Kevin was the interim, and then the discussion, I think I had, direct Annabelle, and the city manager in terms to engage with Marlene's office as well as the proper folks, to negotiate whatever that we got to do. So we'll make sure that, the county do what they need to do with the interlocal and, follow the process and make sure we do what we do.
Yes, Chair, and we have also initiated that conversation already with the staff at the county as well.
Okay, we should be good.
Okay, I just want to make sure that we're apprised up here of conversations, that's being
That's
had with the county, so that, it's one message, this is what we're asking, this is what's best for the CRA, so that we can make sure that we're getting, the best bang for our bucks. I'm hearing discussions for other CRAs, so it's, this is the time for us to negotiate to make sure that we're getting the best deal for our CRA.
Yes.
Understood.
And as we all know, it's a, very political. How we got the last time, historically.
We're
how
not
we
there,
got-
thank God.
Yeah, no, but, and that's the, so we've been trying to do what we do, and we'll continue to have, the proper meeting, but I guess they really, I guess, in control in somewhat.
Of course they are.
And that's where we were the
And
last time
were-
we couldn't do
and-
anything.
And, to the response, I mean, we were in a much different position the
Yes.
last time we were at the
We could-
county.
yeah, we didn't have,
Absolutely.
yeah,
We're in a much better position
better position,
now,
and yes. in
over
terms
the
of-
last, 4 or 5 years since that time to be able to negotiate a better deal. And obviously, we have to negotiate a deal with the city as well.
Yes.
So, I think we're in a much better position, and I think
County.
we're going to get the best bang for our buck this time around.
Yes. Okay, thank you. Go ahead.
Thank
Kevin.
you.
Dunya, can we put the presentation up now? And so I'm going to walk you through,
Stephanie?
Oh, yeah, Councilman, go ahead. Sorry, Kevin,
For the
one quick
record,
announcement.
I have Councilman, Board Member Galvin coming in at 5:35.
25 years, I don't want to.
Yeah.
I don't want to miss it on a technicality.
Oh, God. Love it. Go ahead,
so
go ahead, Kevin.
I guess what I would introduce before we walk through the actual plan is just to kind of refresh, and we're going to touch a little bit on Chapter 163, just a little refresher on what 163 says in terms of the powers of a CRA and the things that are allowed that you can use tax increment revenue for. And then also keep in mind that a redevelopment plan is an authorizing document. It's not a regulatory document. It's not your annual budget. It's not your annual work plan. It is really there to authorize and say, here's what we plan on doing, and to make sure that the things you want to do, you're able to do under the statute. And so, when we talk about it, and we were just talking about how we go to the county, a couple of things to keep in mind as we go through. The key thing is we want to make sure that you're able to accomplish and perform the activities, the projects, the programs that you want to do within the language of the plan in accordance with the statute. The other thing is we want to make sure that specific priority projects are in there. And we had this discussion with the majority of you about a year ago, and you approved a resolution that had to do with priority projects. Because one thing the county does look for, how CRAs have changed CRA plans have changed recently, is they used to be just a lot more general sometimes and sort of catch-all, anything authorized under the plan you wanted in there. But the county, when we do go back for the amendments to the interlocal, they're going to be looking for a project-specific plan. And that's what we did with your last amendment, and that's what we've done with this one, is so it's that balance of making sure that they see that there are specific projects that you've been doing, that you're going to do, but then also making sure that you have the flexibility built in there and the authorization under the statute to do other things, because you do have to adapt to market conditions and other changing conditions and be responsive. So just a little context about that's what the plan is. It's not about, and you will see a 5-year financial projections later, but again, it's projections, it's conceptual, it's not your annual budget, it's not what your budget necessarily will look like next year. You'll see some projects that are sort of, you know, the different years within those 5 years, ultimately on when projects happen may change, but it's more of a conceptual document, again, that authorizes you to keep moving forward with redevelopment.
Quick question, based on the last plan, can you tell us if I know we met some of those objectives earlier and some, can you give us a status where we are in, you know, from the last one as we carry on to this new plan?
Sure. From the last one, you had you had 2 different key measures, one of the 2. One had to do with, are you able, and this is the key thing, if you think about our CRA, your goal is to increase the tax base, you know, and is to clear slum and blight, but you do that by increasing the tax base and programs. And so one of your 2 options for your renewal, your milestones in your interlocal, was an increase of your taxable value in the CRA by a certain percentage. And I can't remember, Stephen, do you remember what that percentage is? But a certain percentage by 2024. And it may have been about, I think it was maybe 20%. Your increase just to date from that time period is almost 60%. So you have far exceeded that threshold. And when you come down to the single biggest measure of a success of a CRA, it is how much increment you're able to grow and how much you're able to grow your tax base to generate the resources to do redevelopment. And so you have, and you know the projects that you've worked with, and you see them coming out of the ground in certain places, and you see the work the CRA's done there. The other side, there were 3 milestones, which were affordable housing, investments on Northwest 7th Avenue, and the downtown parking. So you've met your affordable housing criteria under there. I would tell you, you've even met the Northwest 7th Avenue one. It's not.
No, we have not. I don't know where, Kevin.
Well, you've approved the emblem project because it's not specific that you have to necessarily have invested in and done the project itself. What it's done is it's looking for that sort of investment, and you've had a project come forward on Northwest 7th Avenue that I understand, Chair, that there's a lot more to do on Northwest 7th Avenue.
But we didn't do, I want to be very specific, and I understand what you're saying, but they don't even want CRA funding. So you're saying that if projects are coming into the corridor, that help us as well.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Your goal is that you want places, you want to be in a point, when you go through the CRA, you want to get to the point where the market has taken over and they're not needing that funding.
See.
And so the fact that someone is investing on Northwest 7th Avenue and not asking for CRA money is absolutely a success of the CRA and all of the good work that you have done here in North Miami in creating a place that people want to do that. And so in the narrow view, at least for me, in looking at the interlocal, you have generated that sort of interest in Northwest 7th Avenue, and you'll see in the plan as we go forward, but it's still a priority corridor, and it's still a priority to do additional investment along Northwest 7th Avenue.
Yeah, but again, I want to be cautious and clear. We have not invested as the CRA.
Absolutely.
In the corridor. However, we have one project that's coming, the Emblem Tower, which we excited about for over there. Okay.
Right.
Question, I'm sorry, does it only take in consideration redevelopment projects, i.e. like a development project, or is business attraction also included part of that? Because I know we've done some, maybe like 1 or 2 businesses along Northwest 7th.
In terms of the milestone that's in the interlocal, it would be the development project. But measuring your success, so whether it's Northwest 7th Avenue or West Dixie Highway or any of your corridors, business attraction is a key element of your success of your CRA and your programs.
Got it.
So just not that you don't know, but a reminder of your boundaries of your CRA in red. A significant portion of the land area of the city is taken up by the CRA. And then here, these is sort of our assessment, and this goes back to the public engagement that we did a while back when we were first preparing the plan. We looked at this. We also went back and looked at the public engagement we had done when the CRA was managing the P3 process for downtown. We did a lot of public outreach at that time also, just to come up with, in general, what are some of the different things that the public is telling us. The things that you have in North Miami, the important things to preserve is that you have you're a very open and welcoming community. And if you've heard me speak before, you've heard me say that there's three things that are more important than anything else when you're trying to do redevelopment or revitalization. And it's the aesthetics of a community. It's how it looks and feels, that first impression and that ongoing impression. It's the social engagement and the opportunities for people to interact with each other. And it's how open and welcoming you are. And that's something that we heard that you have and that people wanted to make sure that they preserve as you move forward with revitalization. Your quality of life and again, your legacy businesses, making sure that as you move forward, we're not just thinking about the business attraction and the new businesses, but also your existing businesses who have been here and part of the mix, throughout your growth and your revitalization. We look at what are kind of the key enhancements and again, those neighborhood aesthetics, the aesthetics that you have are so important and continue to be your gateways that help define that you are in North Miami, in the CRA, and you know how kind of in certain places crazy your boundaries can get. And you have confusion in terms of are you in North Miami or not in North Miami, or you're in North Miami Beach because you have the similar names and all of that. So those gateways are important. Enhancing music and the arts and the cultural element as economic development drivers. And that's the key is how do culture and the arts contribute to business attraction and real estate investment and development, the things that help drive your taxable values, your property values. How walking, your biking, your community centers, opportunities to engage with each other. Important investments, places for people. The way that economic development has also evolved, it was evolving already before the pandemic in this way, and it's accelerated through the pandemic. And at the end of the day, economic development, redevelopment is about creating places people want to be. Whether it's where you want to live or where you want to work, where you want to be an entrepreneur, where you want to create, where you want your kids to be raised. And so creating those places for people, again, those of the three things that I mentioned, those opportunities for social engagement. And so we call them, there's sort of two different types that we refer to. You have third places, which are private sector. So those can be coffee shops or craft breweries. Gyms can be that. Places where if you're not at home and you're not at work, it's the next place you want to be where you're around people. And then you have activated public spaces, which do the same thing, but are more your public areas as opposed to your private areas. So those types of investments become important because talent is what drives economic development now, being where people want to be. So when we look at what's happening with tech in South Florida, there's a lot of attention kind of up here at 60,000 feet. Everyone kind of loves the idea of Miami, but we in the CRA have to deal with the reality of Miami and actually create the places, do the hands dirty on the groundwork of doing this and creating the actual places that as this influx comes into South Florida, North Miami is one of those places they actually want to be.
Question, Kevin, real quick. If there's a project in terms of improving transportation or how we move as a city or in terms of a county, would that qualify under CRA funding? I'm just throwing it out there. If there's a project in terms of mobility or transportation that does improve the quality of life or kind of do that, or is it more focused on the streets, et cetera, doing the businesses? et cetera, et cetera.
It is part of this, and one of the sections we'll get to is transportation,
Okay.
traffic and parking, where we do talk about the mobility
Okay.
hub. And, but I think that the CRA's role in there needs to be targeted and not just sort of broad throughout the realm of transportation.
perfect.
But kind of how it relates to the built environment and still, again, in a way that drives that private investment that helps grow your tax base.
Okay.
Things to expose, and you've all heard me constantly talking about, you know, the music infrastructure that you have here and the need to tell those stories. But expose is about telling the stories. You have things happening, you know, even with entrepreneurship. Cities have so many things going on that people are doing that you just don't know they're there, because they're not people who come storming City Hall over a certain issue. They're behind closed doors, just investing and innovating and creating and doing what they do. We just did this in Martin County, and we found a neighborhood where 90% of the patents filed from Martin County were coming from this old industrial park that you would have no idea was a center of innovation if you drove by it. So finding those stories and telling those stories becomes, again, a lot about creating that place that people want to be. You know, it helps show that you already are a place that people should want to be, but it needs to be exposed and much more visible. And then things to capitalize on. You've seen the media. I know John on the city side has distributed some of the media coverage about real estate opportunities and things happening here. So capitalizing on that growing awareness of North Miami as a good investable market. You know, the accessibility you have, the openness, again, that openness and how open and welcoming North Miami is, and a place that anyone can come in and be successful. You know, all of those things to capitalize on become important things. And so these are all things that we identified as we're going through this that become important to how you move forward with your plan update. So just in general, just what we kind of saw as our concept, everyone's probably can have different ideas on this. There's no, you know, necessarily right or wrong answers, but as we looked at it, you've got areas where quality of life is important, again, where neighborhoods where it's important for people to be. You've got places that are either corridors or places that are good for mixed use. You've got places where you could kind of prioritize, you know, how do you merge and converge the creative arts and tech and bring that sort of innovation together. Obviously, you've got your downtown and your mobility hub, and we've had a lot of conversations about that, and some of your niches. But all of these kind of fit together and help, again, craft that story for businesses, for residents, for talent, for investors, on how they can fit in here and find a place that their vision of whatever business or investment or lifestyle that they're looking for can be accomplished.
Quick question with this slide. We many years we had talked about Music City, which is, I saw it in the plan, but I don't see it here. In terms of, is that still something that 'cause I know we've done I think a decent job with the arts and public places, but with the music aspect, like you mentioned, I think that's where our attention should.
It is in the plan, but I didn't identify it here as a specific area because it really, when I look at that, and as a musician, I look here, it's a citywide asset that you have. It's not limited to one place. And so you have music opportunities in downtown, and you have some projects coming in places that could be venues and places where you can do that. You're already doing, you know, you have events and you have music activities that are already happening. You'll see Studio City identified up here at the north end of West Dixie, which is where the sort of behind the scenes studios, you know, we all know the criteria is up there, but there's 15 other studios that have clustered around there in that industrial and those warehouses. So you have some of that. You have opportunities along Northwest 7th Avenue, again, to create. So we didn't want to do this from let's create one music district. The Music City is more of a CRA-wide theme, and each of these different places can play off of it.
Yeah, but Kevin, going back a couple years ago, we had identified Music City with an area. And looking at this, I see all the different hubs, and so it's either it's not in our priority or it's not in the area that we talked about. This was where off the 95 ramp where we were talking about the Wynwood effect in terms of what we need to do with that particular, right behind the flea market. This
Right.
was the area that we were talking about. It's an open space concept. It was, you know, many years. in the concept. So I am a little disappointed that we're not saying it's not, because I think the mobility hub is not only on one area, it's throughout the city. So I would ask you guys to, revisit that, because I think that was important in terms of a priority for the CRA. That's what I thought. So that explanation would not really, I don't want to say make sense, but you have Studio City, you have Mobility Hub, you have the Tech Hub, the Creative Tech we've talked about. Are those only opposed to those particular area?
Not necessarily. Again,
Okay.
this is just sort of conceptual in ways you can start telling your story, and it does not preclude an actual Music City.
Okay, well, but I'm asking you if you could go in the plan and what we talked about a couple
Sure.
of years, if that could be in there.
We can highlight, and I think that
Please.
in the Northwest 7th Avenue mixed-use project that was identified as a priority project had that concept attached to it, and we could even maybe overlay the priority projects with this, because that's where you'll see the mobility hub match up, and you'll see the downtown parking match up with downtown and the P3 and what you're trying to do. So we'll play around with it and kind of look at kind of how we can bring that forward.
Thank you.
So I did want to go back and touch base on Chapter 163, because there have been some changes to Chapter 163 over the years. And most recently, there was a change in 2019, which is more relevant to the slide after this that I will talk about. But keeping in mind what you're here to do. And so, a CRA, a redevelopment agency's purpose is to eliminate slum and blight. Your finding of necessity was based on blight, and is to eliminate those blight conditions. In the statute, under your powers, you have the power to issue revenue bonds when authorized by the county. You have the power to acquire and dispose of property for redevelopment purposes. Constructing improvements that carry out your redevelopment plan's objectives, and so you have the ability to go in and do that direct sort of investment. Repair and rehabilitation of existing structures, and one of your priority projects is the multifamily rehabilitation program. Receiving and using tax increment revenue, obviously, to fund your redevelopment activities, and to fund the expenditures that are necessary to actually come in and carry out the plan, your administration, your overhead, the things you need to do to actually, have a professional staff that can come in and do the work. And then in Chapter 163-387 are the uses of tax increment revenue. And this is the big change. And some of you, I know, went to the FRA conference last October. One of the hot topics at the conference was the conversation about marketing. And that's been sort of ongoing on what you can and can't do when it comes to marketing, when it comes to events. There had been an Attorney General's opinion back in 2010 that addressed this a little bit, but then essentially what happened in the 2019 amendment is there was this list in the statute of things you can spend TIF on. But in the statute at the time, it said the following items, including but not limited to. What they did in 2019 is they struck the line, including but not limited to. So essentially, what they did, and Stephen, jump in if I misspeak or if you need to. What they essentially did by striking that is made this an exhaustive list of the things that you can use tax increment revenue for.
What they did, Kevin, they took out the words where it said including but not limited to. They took out but not limited to. So it basically said, this is it. This is the list of the stuff you can spend your
What
money
page
on.
is this on in the package?
No, you have to go to the statute.
I'm not sure it's actually in
Okay.
the plan itself.
This is not in the plan itself.
okay.
This
Part of
is
the presentation.
this is just part of the
The presentation.
context for your plan in terms of what is in the statute. And so the tax increment revenue is, you can obviously, just like in the powers, pay for administration and overhead. You can do redevelopment planning, you can do your surveys, you can do your financial analysis. Your property acquisition, again, in the powers, you can buy and sell property and use that for redevelopment purposes. Clearance and preparation of your redevelopment sites, and debt service and affordable housing. Now, what we have added in here, and this is language that is not in the draft plan that you have, but we've been.
Do we have a copy of his slides?
No.
No?
This is Mr. Crowder's presentation. What you have is the
It's the actual
plan.
plan.
Correct.
Okay,
You
that's
have to
what
go
we're
to the
looking at.
statute, he mentioned, he referenced the
Yeah.
statute.
Yes, and it's now on the screen if you,
387?
163.387.
Yeah,
And
normally
we'll
we
get
have
you
the
copies of the
slide.
presentation as well,
Yeah.
honestly,
Can you
sure.
email us the slide, is that, once you're done, Mr.?
What's that? I'm sorry, Mayor?
Can you email us the slide?
Certainly.
staff will
Thank you.
provide that
The
tomorrow.
PowerPoint? Okay, thank you.
Certainly. On this slide, I'm not going to read the language, but essentially, this is language we are going to add into the draft plan that the CRA attorney has provided us that has to do with that change. I'll just read you sort of my last statement in there, which is marketing expenses, or really any other expenses when it comes to that 2019 amendment, will be limited to carrying out the purposes of your redevelopment plan and be done within accordance of Chapter 163 and the uses and powers that are contained in there.
And just, Kevin, if I could just jump in for a second. So the issue was that the legislature has always sort of identified CRAs, I don't want to use the word that they use, like slush fund, but that the monies are not being expended as intended to under the act. And marketing was always a big area that has been targeted by the legislature, where they see CRAs year in, year out, providing sponsorships for different events. And events is not something that they want you to support. They want you to support the dissemination, of information about, slum and blight clearance and redevelopment. So when you have a project, let's say it's the gardens, and they have a groundbreaking or a ribbon cutting, we'll be there, you'll be there, and we can support that because that's part of what you've done to assist in alleviating slum and blight. But if you ask the CRA every year to give you $50,000 for a particular event, that's not something we may be able to do, and that's sort of where they're trying to draw the line.
So, for instance, I'm just gonna put like my Know Me Business Summit on the spot. Is that something that the CRA would not do, but is that something that the CRA could do because it's, educating businesses on, to do business in the city and within the CRA? Or is it specific types of events?
That's I think something they probably could do.
Okay.
Because that's something, and again, so the whole
Wait
point
a
of,
minute.
the whole point of the plan is you can't do something unless it's in your plan. Okay? If the plan doesn't say you can buy land, then you're not buying land. So as long as these things are in the plan, then you can spend money on them. But, pure marketing, like buying tables at dinners and things like that, those are the things that we're advised and trained that, we shouldn't be doing. But things like what you're talking about are different.
Right, I would, for me, it's sort of your litmus test or your sort of, credibility, logic test of it is, does what we're trying to do in this effort lead to potential increases in the tax base? So entrepreneurship, business development, new businesses in the building, you can make that, you can credibly make that connection.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Kevin.
So in
No,
general,
it's real rough
just
because-
to,
because
if
I'm
I may,
confused now with them.
and Kevin knows this because I sit on the FRA board, and it is true that the marketing, the emphasis on how you use your dollars, like the attorney mentioned, using it for a ribbon cutting, that's acceptable, because, that is a part of economic development, eliminating slum and blight, that's fine. But outright having a party, outright having an event, I mean, they had a whole session on.
You must have talked to the people.
No, they had a whole session on that, and there were a lot, and there was a particular attorney, a woman, remember, from
So
West
it
Palm?
was Claudia McKenney, and
Right.
actually this
That she-
language, which I've proposed for the plan,
Yeah.
is something that came from her and I worked on with her.
What page is that on in the plan?
Yeah, because, based on that definition, I think we as the board, should do whatever that we in terms do with the ribbon cutting, whatever that we do. We get it, that we can't spend it on particular, I guess, whatever parties, et cetera, et cetera. We know Tallahassee, it's been rough. In fact, they wanted to, I guess, still want to sunset CRAs, but you could always find having a business development workshop or whatever, they could say that that's a party. So, it's kind of a little tricky, a little, no, because you could, if there's an event and then your business, your businesses, you're sponsoring your business to attend or to do something within that event that's promoting.
But a business summit, for example, if you
That's
are, if it's a business summit where you are providing information so that they can be empowered and they can come
Is
into
that-
in your city and improve and increase the increment, then that is justifiable. That's not a party. That's you understand?
Yeah.
I see.
guess-
I hear where you're going, but that's definitely justifiable.
I guess.
Empowerment, yeah,
I
information. Yeah.
think that the chair is correct. It is tricky, and it is a gray area. And in the past, it was more easy to
Easier.
justify using the Attorney General opinion from 2010, which we had all been relying on, at multiple CRAs and the attorneys and all of us. But now it's been made clear that this was one of the target areas, and the vice chair is correct. And at the FRA conference, they drilled down on that for us. And this
Right,
is one of
and-
the areas that,
What page is it on?
we don't
He
want
said
to
he
be,
made-
you know.
Because no, he said he made sorry, Stephen,
No,
but
no,
you
go
said
ahead.
you made you included it in the plan. You included that language or no?
Well,
It's going to be included in
it's
the plan,
going
but right
to
now
be.
it's on the,
It's just part of the presentation.
Right.
Right now, I provided the information, I think, a day or two ago, and,
Right, and Mr. Zuckowitz is right. In the past, it relied on the Attorney General opinion, and also on that language that said not limited to. So essentially, a lot of CRAs kind of worked under the premise that as long as it's in your plan, you can do it, and we're not necessarily in that place anymore.
Right.
Mr. Chairman, I have a quick question.
She's going back here, right? Oh, okay.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, if I may. Quick question, point of clarification instead. For example, I remember early February, we have the Caribbean Fest that we had over at Griffin Park. Oh, that was like very nice, and we had a lot of people there. So does that mean in this context we cannot have events like that?
so with the Caribbean Arts Fest, I mean, that is one of the things that we would have to analyze. We do have public arts that is a part of our plan, and we do have that component to it. So we would have to look at, CRA expenditures relative to what we are trying to do within the plan. If public arts is something that we have in our plan and the Caribbean Arts Fest is something that promotes that, that's something that we would look at and be careful of. But again, that is one of those, like we're discussing, it's a gray area.
How is that a gray area? Because we have vendors, we have small businesses that are coming. I'm sorry? No, but it's no, but there's music involved as well, but music is not the primary event.
Mhm.
The primary event is the exposure of the art and the selling of the art with the small businesses. That's what Carrie Fest is.
That was my question, because this kind of confused everything.
If I mean, am I describing that correctly?
No,
Carrie
we're all
No, I think you have the.
We're
right
not against it.
understanding.
It's we're trying to figure out how the state, when we talk about these marketing events, because, well, marketing, first of all, is not even under events, so that's totally two different things, but that is correct. And I didn't even think about the Caribbean and all this and all that. So where do we draw the line? For example, I know you talk about the sponsorship, we cannot sponsor Nomi Fest or all these particular events, but at that event, in terms of promoting small business, that was one of the things that we did do to promote the small businesses, to have them come in for free and sell their product, whatever the case is. So we can't do those. So can we create an event that we did that we can't, or that trying to attract business, or like the Caribbean? So it's you see, it's a little tricky and confusing in terms of where
right.
we
So
are.
I think going forward with the new executive director, I think we can probably come up with events that, we feel that we can support. And there may be events that perhaps the city supports to some extent, and the CRA, provides some of the money, but not all of the money. And we'll, provide parameters so that we all feel comfortable that what we're doing is within the ambit of the law. I mean, that's all we're trying to do. No one's trying to stop events from happening or stop you from having the Caribe Arts Festival and stop us from being
if we
involved
can't
in
spend
that.
the
We
money,
just want to
we
make
can
sure
stop.
that we're doing it correctly now because we're working under a new set of rules than we were in the past.
And maybe what we need to do is maybe have a checklist, like that states like, hey, what is
Yes.
this event, what is this public purpose, what is this,
purpose?
does it
Right.
remove, like, just something that we can
Yes.
kind of guide and kind of use that as, you know, our reasoning for. But I
That's a great
believe that
idea.
the Caribe Fest was included, like, that was one of the CRAs, they, in the plan that we would do a festival of some sort. It was mac and cheese, and then mac and cheese turned into
It's a-
Caribe
yes.
Fest and.
So I
and
think
so
a
forth.
checklist would be very helpful, and I think at the time it was included, that was pre this change, and I think that's the issue that's happening. This change has happened at a time that is now shifting the direction of a lot of different things. One way a creative way that we can think about continuing some of these functions is to probably gain outside sponsorship. The issue is using CRA dollars on them, right? So it could be a CRA inspired event, and if we got outside sponsorship, that's still something that could happen because it's not the CRA dollars that are being supporting that event. So if, you know, we could probably see how to do something like that to kind of transition some of the events off of the CRA financial books.
Right, and I would add, just to maybe wrap it up, your plan allows you to continue doing those events and those activities within the context of Chapter 163. So that checklist and doing that specific review on every event is going to be important. When it comes to music, and Ms. Manuel already referred to this, some CRAs may be more limited. Music is a specific targeted industry that you have. And so engaging in things that help that industry, you can credibly do. We just still have to do that checklist and make sure that the individual events as they come forward pass that, but your plan will allow you to do that as long as they do fall under the statutory authority.
Okay. Thank you.
And so just I'll briefly walk you through the different sections. We have about 5 sections in the plan. The first one is economic development. You have identified in the past 2 priority projects that fall within this section. There's additional priority projects. It's the downtown parking garage and it's the Northwest 7th Avenue mixed-use development, the one that we had looked at up by the flea market and in that area that could be music themed and created that opportunity for that. And the parking garage is part of the P3 in the downtown as the 2 priority projects under economic development. But then there's additional things. You know, your commercial districts, for the most part in North Miami, are actually state road corridors. You know, it's not off the road, you know, districts. 125th Street, West Dixie Highway, Northwest 7th Avenue, Biscayne Boulevard even. But, you know, some of those, again, especially when we talk about things like aesthetics and different things, you know, with, you know, prioritizing Northwest 7th Avenue, Northwest 6th Avenue, and West Dixie Highway, it doesn't mean you can't do anything or focus on the other districts. The plan is written where you can address the issues in all of the districts that you have, all of the commercial districts that you have within the city.
And just to jump in on that, I think there was a conversation that has been had regarding the difference between priority projects and priority areas within the CRA. So as Mr. Crowder has mentioned, the priority projects that we've listed right here are there. However, there is an opportunity for the board to designate priority districts within the CRA, and what that would mean is we could come up with a board with guidelines of how to further incentivize activity along those corridors. For example, if you were to, right now, we have our TIF guidelines that allow up to 50% of TIF for major construction, for major developments. If you wanted to further incentivize the Northwest 7th Avenue corridor as a development site, you could increase the amount of TIF that you give along that corridor. So you could remain within 50% in all the other areas of the CRA, however, increase the TIF on that the developer could receive on Northwest 7th Avenue. So to highlight certain priority districts, the board could then just give enhanced incentives for developing in those areas or bringing businesses or whatever attractions that the board saw fit.
Again, those guidelines would be things you would do separately. They're not things you would do as part of this plan. This plan authorizes these activities. And as you've done, and if you remember in the last couple of years, you've made changes to the guidelines on different programs, and those would be done separately.
However, what would
So
need
the-
to happen,
so-
though, is not just commercial districts. Right now, those are identified. The board in the plan would have to identify them as priority districts for increased incentives. So that part would be in the plan, but you don't have to name what the actual incentives are.
Okay, that's what I was going to ask.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
we were just handed a printed copy of the presentation that happened. Did one of my fellow council CRA members ask for a printed copy?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I just was unclear why 1 hour, 45 minutes into the presentation, we were handed a printed copy of something that was
Kev-
available online. I was
Kevin, you didn't want to make this
utterly
public
confused.
record? Oh, but this does says music cluster on it, so it's at the bottom.
Yeah, no,
here. I don't know if you
it
saw.
just fully caught me off guard that somebody walked up here and started handing me documentation, 45 minutes. I belabored the point, I'm shutting up now. Rock on with your bad selves.
Go Rangers.
So, yes.
And in addition, your other economic development activities, you're targeting your foundational industries when it comes to business attraction and business recruitment. You know, finding your opportunities when it comes to tech and your creative industries, and to create that sort of those innovation, we call them collisions when we talk about that, you know, where you want these different industries to come together and start innovating and finding their opportunities to find that niche. When you talk about, you know, tech and the things, again, that are going on here, finding that niche that fits North Miami, and partnering with the city a lot on that, because your city's already working a lot on that with Nomi Tech and what's going on. So finding the CRA's role, and especially on there, that placemaking, that place that people want to be, that those innovators and those creators and the tech talent wants to be. You know, your business assistants, again, the talent attraction I mentioned, your market positioning. Again, this comes back to, you know, making sure that you're testing against Chapter 163 when you're doing your market position and the marketing and the events and those things. And then again, capitalizing on that music cluster and that expose and telling those stories as one of your anchors.
So I have a question. Under economic development, where it says priority project, so we're just listing two. Could we list like the commercial districts and that designating those areas as priority projects as well?
Those would be not priority projects, but priority
The areas.
areas,
Okay,
correct.
okay.
So if the board wanted tonight to do
That's
so,
good.
that's something the board
Let
could
me
do.
ask you a question, because that's a good question the board member asked. So if we add priority areas,
Correct.
are we only going to be, I don't want to use the word judge, but graded or looked over by the county based on the two or whatever amount of projects that we have, you know, or all of the projects, including the areas that we added, the county will be looking at, saying you didn't meet this one, you didn't meet this one?
So no, so they're different. Your priority
Okay.
projects are very different. These are our development initiatives, and further along in the presentation, Mr. Crowder is going to highlight further priority projects, and these are things that the county is looking at.
Those two.
Those two, along with the others that are listed, there's going to be more on other slides. However, to designate priority areas as a board, what you're saying is we want to further incentivize activity along these certain these certain areas, right? So that's separate and apart from your designated priority projects. So they're a little different.
Right, Mr. Chair, the priority projects are the things when the county says they were looking
That's the
for a
one.
project-specific plan, it shows that these are actual projects we're going to
We
engage
must-
with, in addition to all of the other redevelopment.
And how many do we have in this plan?
I want to say there's 5 or 6. You'll see
Yeah.
them in different areas. They're the ones that had come to the board of last year.
So if we already met those criterias, do we remove them or do we repeat them?
Well, these have not been completed.
No,
The ones
no,
that you
I
see,
know.
yeah.
I'm saying, so the other ones, like the affordable housing, we're not putting that in the plan?
Affordable housing is, so the priority project that you have discussed and was in the resolution that you approved is the multifamily rehabilitation program.
Okay.
And we're adding that into the plan, and you'll see that in the housing section. Just as here in the public improvement section is where we've identified the conversations we've had that goes, again, going back to the conversations last year about the community centers, Griffin Park, and at the time, Solomia Park, and now Galvin Center. But the community centers were the priority project that was identified at the time. So you'll see them appear in each of the different sections. When we get to transportation, the mobility hub is that. And so you'll see a priority project in each of the main sections, at least one.
Okay, so just so I understand, so in this section, this is economic development. The two priority projects are the one on 7th Avenue in the downtown garage parking. Is this the old one, or this is well, I know it was the old one, and we're also including it again in the new
We
one.
didn't meet them, right?
These are new in the plan.
These are new in the plan. So for example, if I wanted to make, so you see how you have Northwest Seventh Avenue mixed-use development? If I also wanted to make priority project for West Dixie mixed-use development.
Or is that an area?
Right,
Is it area
So
I
if
don't
you
want it
were
to be an
to-
area, I want it to be a priority project.
So if you were to designate West Dixie mixed-use development, then you would be saying that we would have to go ahead and put a mixed-use development on
Yeah,
West
on
Dixie
West
Highway.
Dixie.
That would be what the plan is telling
Okay.
us to do.
Okay.
Versus saying West Dixie Highway is a priority area and we will incentivize whatever development
Yes.
comes to West
So
Dixie
West
Highway.
Dixie,
So this may help. The priority projects are the projects that this board approved by resolution about a year ago as the projects intended to go into the loan.
Yes.
intended to go
Intended to go into the loan or the bond that the CRA
Okay.
issues. And so that's what those projects are. And then you have additional projects and other things, and I think that's why the executive director is talking about these additional priority areas, because you don't necessarily have a specific project
Got it.
for an area, but you do want to prioritize and try to get one there, but we don't have necessarily a project that would go into a loan.
Got it.
I think that's.
But we do have cable.
I was gonna say, for West
We
Dixie.
do have
Well,
cable.
definitely
and so,
Cable.
and you may have a lot of additional projects. You've got
Fix it.
62 million in a first tranche, and we'll talk about in the financials, you've got a limited amount of loan capacity you're going to be
Yes,
able to.
that is correct.
And so you, as a board, will have to make that determination in terms of how you prioritize your priority projects within your your available funding.
Okay.
I'll have you continue.
So I think with those specific projects, when we do our retreat, that could be would we have
No,
time
we would know.
to?
Sierra's not in the retreat.
So tonight is a night for us to receive your feedback so we can then incorporate it into the plan and turn this back around to you on May 9th
Got
in
it.
final form for you
Okay.
to approve. So we are very hopeful that tonight you can give us all the direction you'd like to be able to produce a final form document for approval on May 9th.
Okay, once they finish.
So my only comment for public improvement, if we can
So
also,
are we done with
Wait.
economic development? So,
Oh, I
because
thought
I'm
you
kind
were
of lost. Can we move on to the next one? Are we done with
Yes, sir.
economic development? No,
So-
that's in the
Well,
board.
is the board designating priority areas or not?
I mean,
Say that one more
you
time?
want us to do that now?
I want to know if you want that so we
Oh,
can give
okay.
this back to you on May 9th that with
I
them
see.
designated.
So, Councilwoman member, I'm sorry, board member, Vice Chair, you mentioned
Yes, so I
West
have no,
Dixie
right,
is
so I
an
have
area.
no issue, right,
Okay.
not an area, I want it to be a priority
Here's the problem.
project. The downtown parking garage, I have no issues, the Seventh Avenue mixed use, I have no issue.
But-
I'd like for West Dixie to also be included as a priority project.
And is there a project that has already
Yeah.
been identified for West Dixie Highway? Or is that something that we will identify at a later date?
There, actually, yes, there's a project that has been identified.
or
So that, do we
projects.
find, do we identify and find the money for that particular area? My question to you then, what if we don't meet those things? What happened to the CRA? Because based on the benchmarks,
Well, when we come back on the 9th, the additional conversations with the county will identify what if any additional milestones
Oh,
or
okay.
benchmarks they're looking for.
so the county will guide us in terms of, is that what I'm hearing?
In the interlocal agreement, it's
Yes.
also going to outline the benchmarks that need to be met by the CRA, if any, in order to maintain.
Because my only concern is we had projects that
Mhm.
we did not meet all of the goals. So adding on, that's my only pause. Where do we get the capacity? Or if we didn't meet those projects and we putting them back on the books in this plan, adding more, would we be able to meet the goal?
So you probably could, and what you're going to have to do at a later date, you're going to, again, you're moving, this is your authorizing document. You're separately going to do an item which is to authorize going out for a loan. Now, all of your priority projects and all of your grants that you've done, and you'll see on the slide, are not all going to come out of the loan. Some are going to come out of budget as you go
Yes.
forward. And so you will have to make those funding decisions in terms of what is ready to go and what is prioritized are not part of this. They will come at a later date. And if you were to add, say, a priority project on West Dixie Highway, and when you come forward, it's going to move when it's ready to move. But it would be authorized in the plan. But if it's not
What
ready
is
for
the
funding
project?
yet,
Do we know? Are we getting,
Well, we didn't
we
have
know?
we didn't have a priority project on West Dixie Highway as yet, so the funding isn't allocated for that at this point.
okay, so how do we do that? If I want to add something, do we vote on it, or are we just having conversation? How
So
does that work?
I would say that if the board has a will to see something in the final form, to inform us tonight so we can include it in final form. But another thing that I would encourage the board to think of this as the plan being a general outline of what you want to see. That way we are not necessarily locked into anything that we
Well,
don't do.
that's my only concern, is that,
So
so
just
Mr.
two things to
Attorney,
put out there.
Mr. Zuckowitz, so if we want to add projects or delete projects, how do we go back? Are we just making suggestion now, or do you want us to vote on it and move forward, or how do we get it going?
Well, I think tonight we're looking for consensus. At the next meeting, when we bring it back,
Have
there'll
more
be a vote.
details.
But if there's not a consensus to include the districts, the priority districts, or to include a specific project, I think we want to understand that now, because we want to come back, on the 9th
Well,
and and then have someone say, well, I don't agree with that, and I'm not going to vote for the plan then, because I'm just making an example, that because we put that West Dixie project in the plan. So I would like us, like you all, to sort of give a consensus if you support that. And Kevin, correct me if I'm wrong, just because it's in the plan doesn't mean you have to do it. It's
Does not.
authorizing you to do it
Oh.
if at a later date.
Oh, okay.
you-
So
Right.
just because it's in there doesn't mean that we have to,
No, the only things
mean,
that
the goal
you
is to-
actually have to do is what the county tells us
Correct.
in the interlocal.
In your
we have
interlocal
to-
agreement.
Correct.
So that's the difference between the plan and the interlocal.
oh, okay, so this is not, okay.
So
The
you
plan
could-
gives us the authority to do something. The
something.
interlocal
So
agreement
my-
is
Tells
going to
us-
be the
My
outline.
advice would be to put it in the plan and
Got
say
it.
we want a project there, because if you decide to do a project there later,
At least
we're
it's
gonna have to
there.
amend the plan. So my advice would be to put that in, and.
Right, and Mr. Chair, when we did the 2016 plan, you had a lot of projects in
Yes.
that plan that were authorized. Your benchmark was either the TIF growth or 2 of 3, the housing in the Northwest 7th Avenue. It didn't go back to the full list of projects you had in the plan.
Okay,
And
so
so
we gotta
that will
add-
be more of the
Oh,
interlocal.
no, I got it. So priority project would be the West Dixie corridor, added as a priority project.
Like a West
But not-
Dixie
Mixed
mixed-use,
use.
mixed-use
Mixed use.
project.
Mixed use, yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
How do you-
now, Mr. Chairman, if I may, so what are the criteria in selecting those priority projects?
Those don't have to be determined tonight. This is more of the guidelines, and then, at a later date, we can come back and decide what that mixed-use project looks like.
Maybe.
Right.
Okay.
We would come back with recommendations
Correct.
as to what
Okay.
type of project it is based upon what's happening along that corridor, what Kevin or Mr. Crowder might feel would be best suited, and your executive director, and then you would vote on that particular project, how much you're gonna fund it. Because these
We haven't done
priority
that.
projects, and correct me if I'm wrong, are projects that the CRA is actually going to fund.
These would be projects that the CRA would be participating in directly. Yes.
Okay,
Can I, Mr. Chair, if I can also add, not as a priority project, but do we have to designate the areas as well?
Yes.
yes.
Where are the list of all the areas? Is it just these,
They in-
is it the commercial? I know you said there was several.
Well, these are the commercial districts that were listed: Northwest 7th Avenue, Northeast 6th Avenue, and West Dixie Highway. If the board knows of any other areas that you think need particular incentivization in order to have development occur
Right.
there, then this is your time to let us know so we can highlight those in the plan.
Right, so your plan lets you do redevelopment, revitalization on all of your commercial corridors. These are the 3 that were identified as
Priority.
We
priority.
have Northwest 119th or 17th Avenue, West Dixie, we got West Dixie.
But yeah, West Dixie's already
What's
on
the
here.
other one? The commercial. Yeah,
120.
119.
19th Street.
Well, Northwest 119?
No,
Yeah.
no, we got that in your area. There's,
I have
The south, where you're
125th,
trying to do the train.
135th, or 123rd. That's the mobility hub. I think that's already
Okay, so that's already,
in there.
okay.
135th Street, yeah.
Yeah.
I would want it to be.
So I think 125th Street, is that already on there or no?
Yeah,
125th Street.
So we don't
Downtown.
currently have any designated areas. The only thing that came before the board right now were the commercial districts, and it was as a template of perhaps these could be designated areas. So right now, there are none that are being suggested. However, if you wanted to use the 3 that are here as commercial districts to say, listen, we want to incentivize these areas, you
These
could, or
areas.
if there are any other areas that you think need special. So the idea is, these are areas that without this special incentivization, nothing's gonna happen there, right? So you want to kind of incentivize and push people,
Okay.
because within the CRA, they're gonna get an incentive. We have our different programs. However, you wanna add on top of those programs for these
Right.
like specially marked places, so that people would choose that over another area in the CRA.
So in this list, I'd like to include 119th Street and 135th Street. Along
And
with 7th
125th.
Avenue, 6th Ave, West Dixie. And 125th, I think it's already included because it's the whole
Downtown.
downtown area. Oh, you want to include it?
I would like to list it, just so that we.
Sure, sure, and 120, and
Listed as a
125th
commercial
Street.
district?
Yeah, listed as a
Okay.
commercial district, 125th Street.
Do you want me to
Okay.
read the list so that because we almost,
So the ones
got to
I've
this
heard
list.
thus far are 119th Street, 135th Street, and 125th Street.
Yeah.
no, you heard before that.
Northwest 7th Avenue.
No,
North-
it's already on
It's already
there.
on there.
It was,
Right.
I think you said it's 17th Avenue.
Northwest 17th Avenue.
Okay.
Oh, 17th Avenue.
And then you have your 119, north side of 119,
Northwest
which is,
119, right?
is it no? No, that's on 7th Avenue. So you're talking about by Gratney area, that from West Dixie to Northwest 7th.
North Miami Avenue, is that?
From West Dixie
Mhm.
to Northwest 7th North is the commercial area. It has some little mix of, but that's with Gratney Elementary, then you touch, because we haven't touched, that just became ours,
Oh,
a
through
portion of
annexation.
that, just
So,
2 years ago.
but you know what? It's not in the CRA.
The
It's not.
The other side is not on
No.
the CRA? No?
It's not in
Okay.
the CRA. So we're talking, just to be clear, we're
Just to
talking
be
about
clear, the
that
commercial
part that
district.
was just incorporated,
Annex.
into our city.
So Gratney is not, okay.
No.
Yeah, it's not
Got
within
it.
the
Oh,
CRA.
because it would have been, I see.
Right.
Yes, it
Not
was
the
after
CRA.
our plan.
Okay.
Okay, so disregard that. We'll have to work that out.
Do you want to
Okay.
state the areas? Do you guys have
You
it?
got it?
Northeast 125th Street, I would put / 123rd Street since it goes, it kind of changes. Northeast 135th. Are we still doing Northwest 17th Avenue? Are we doing 119?
No.
No? Okay.
Yeah, we can
We
still
can't.
do.
I thought
From
we said
7
it's-
to
Oh, we can,
17?
yes, we can, yes,
Yeah, there are
119.
parts of
That's outside.
119 that are
That's
still
outside.
part of the
Yeah, that's
CRA.
outside.
That
Northwest.
area is not.
From 7 to
Got it.
17, yeah.
Across from where
Yes,
used to be
yes, that's what I,
Coco's.
yes.
Yeah.
I put that,
And are the 3 commercial districts included as well? Northwest 7th, Northeast 6th, and West Dixie Highway, are those also included?
Yes.
Oh,
yeah, they would
yes.
be.
Oh, yeah, this,
yes.
I wanna
this
be
is in
clear.
addition
Yeah.
to.
Two.
Okay.
Yes.
in addition.
So that the
Alright.
priority, but these are commercial districts that
Right.
we want to focus on.
So we have 6 priority areas at this point.
No. We were talking about commercial districts under the priority. I thought the priority was the
Right.
2, and then you said
Yeah, we're
underneath.
saying
No,
the
no,
same
it's 6
thing.
areas.
We're
yeah.
saying the same
6
thing.
areas.
Mhm.
She's
Yeah.
saying the same thing.
Okay.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
I don't think we're gonna have enough time.
No,
We need
we're
to
not.
get to the numbers.
I know, probably,
So, the next area, your public improvements, some of the other areas, again, this is your infrastructure and your aesthetics, streetscape and lighting, in your commercial districts and your neighborhood improvement projects. So your ability to come in and do those as projects come forward, aesthetic improvements that could include wayfinding and landscaping and other
Can we do
investments.
with the
Again.
CRA,
Yeah.
Pardon me?
can we
Light.
do that? Can we do those specific
Streetscape
projects in the
lighting.
neighborhoods
Within the CRA?
within the?
Streetscape and
Yeah.
yes, we do streets. Yes, that's
Oh.
that's fine. That's a
Probably
beautification
just have
aspect.
done mainly beautification, so, okay.
I would just like to emphasize on lighting, guys. It is, I've gotten a lot of complaints
Okay.
about it being dark in areas
That's-
and,
yeah,
and
the neighborhood.
so
Okay.
I hope that when we have to decide that
We'll,
we have a great emphasis on lighting.
Got it.
Yeah.
Sure.
But go ahead.
The only, Mr. Chair, if I may, the only amendment that I would like, that I would like to add to this area, for community centers, maybe we can do like some business activations as concessions. We're on public improvement.
Yeah.
Because it says priority projects, community centers. But if, let's say I wanted to do like an activation at a community center at our park, would that also be included? Like if we wanted to maybe do like some partnership with like a outside entity where we say, hey, you're able to come to this park for like 5 years and set up shop and do some type of activation. Is that also included under community centers, or do we have to kind of like make an amendment to include that?
That's programming. That's what
But
says.
it's almost like a business attraction at some of our community centers to try to
I mean, I think
incorporate-
that could be included under neighborhood improvement program.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, there's a way, and we'll think of the language to do that to make sure that you stay within statute, because there's a lot of, at the end of the day, the CRA doesn't own those parks. And so there's going to be, there's outside CRA issues that we just need to make sure get covered that have to do with, commercial use of parks and different things. But I'll work with
Okay.
Mr. Zelkowitz and we'll figure out kind of.
We're trying to get to the tax
The numbers.
incentive, the numbers, the revenues before this report. So if I may ask the members if they would please review the list and send the comments and questions in terms of public improvement, housing and residential, unless there's anything major, because there's two priority projects which we haven't done, which is the Rock Sparks. What is the rehabilitation program? Is that the citywide program we are mentioning?
Yeah.
And that one, was it something specific?
Right, that is the rehabilitation of, you've got a number of buildings, multifamily buildings that need improvement. And obviously, we see news stories come out about, ever since Champlain Towers, we see other buildings being closed. So this creates a program that you didn't have before. And again, if you go back and remember the powers under 163 that talked about, this fits, specifically named in there. And it gives an opportunity to create a program. This authorizes you to create a program, and actually, I think you already have.
did.
To be able to provide assistance to those buildings to make those repairs that are
Where
needed.
can we help single family,
We already have that.
and if we could,
So you
We
have,
already
we
have the
have the
residential
power
rehabilitation
in terms
program.
of-
right, this
No.
is added in, this is not currently in your plan as was identified as a
That's what I
priority
was saying.
project. It does not discount any of the other things you're already
Because that-
authorized to
Okay,
do.
because that's what I was saying. I didn't see it with that. Does that mean it comes off the?
No, our continuing programs are gonna, this is
Include-
updating it to include these.
To include, okay.
Yeah.
Correct.
Okay.
I'm good with
Development support, coordination. of-
Well, in transit and transportation, this is the mobility hub. The CRA had prepared the mobility hub study 2 or 3 years ago. Priority project, obviously, and the good work that a lot of y'all did with the county in working towards this location as the commuter rail continues to move forward. So the mobility hub and working with the private sector on creating that is one of your priority projects. And again, it fit in 2 places, so, the downtown parking, it's an economic development project, and it fits economic development, but it also obviously fits into the transportation and parking section as well.
So for transportation, transit and transportation, I want to make sure or ask, I'd like to have, it doesn't have to be a priority project, but I want to make sure that we are also including air mobility as well, in
The
our
airport?
plan and just in preparation for the future.
When you say air mobility,
You know what I'm
the
talking
plane or?
Yeah. Being able,
Wait.
so you and I, we went on
Yes.
on a transportation mission trip where, believe it or not, it's coming soon, where if there be buildings, like Solomia, for example, would be able to
or the-
lend.
And we actually, and we can include that, we've been doing a lot of work on that, and we're working on an innovation hub in Martin County.
Right.
We actually just designed a building with a vertiport on top of it.
It's-
So, and
just-
Vice Chair, you're right, this is coming, it's
No, it is coming soon.
accelerating. And finding ways to position
Exactly.
for that,
But-
we're gonna have to coordinate with the city on that, and we'll put the right language in here
It's-
to address it.
Yeah, because I believe they identifying the areas, because remember we were talking about, this is Hialeah, and, you know, we were talking about the Opelika Airports, near, as we were talking about what council member is talking about, the air mobility that's going on outside the U.S. and Europe. So another one that I wanted to add is, as part of this is this, oh God, what is I went blank on this one. This is in parts with transportation, creating a solution from North Miami to Miami Beach using RC taxi, waterway taxi.
Waterway,
Yes, so that would be something that is very, very important. And I believe that they do have somewhat from talking to folks and staff in Broward. So the idea is perhaps to create something which we very, very needed in Miami-Dade County, of providing a taxi service perhaps from here to Miami Beach in a few minutes, similar to when we were in Jersey, how they had the ferry, just real quick you get there to delay the traffic and stuff.
Mr. Chair, I'm wondering, are the waterways kind of within the CRA, though? That's the
No,
thing.
well, not
Yeah.
necessarily.
To do that on the city side.
On the city, yeah, on the city side.
Yeah, that's, we can talk
No,
about it. I think that's a little challenging for TIF.
Okay. So even if we have an investor who is willing to do that in terms of perhaps the parking of folks, because the idea is to folks who are coming in from Broward trying to get to the beach, this will be the destination in terms of, so not necessarily touching the area, because I understand the area may not be in the CRA, but in terms of transporting, just like we did with Freebie, using specific transportation means to get there, to get to the destination. Would that be something?
My thoughts there are your best opportunity would be to see what that service's physical and real estate needs are, and to incorporate that into the mobility hub or into that more physical real estate project, redevelopment project that supports that activity rather than the operations of the service.
Can we get to the tax increment
Sure.
in 10 minutes?
Just real quick on the redevelopment support, we just want to make sure, you want to coordinate with the city, and obviously you went through your comp plan process recently, that you're able to buy and sell land, you're able to engage in borrowing, and you're able to do financial incentives. We don't define the guidelines, again, of the incentives in here. This authorizes you to do that, and and you've been doing that. So on the financials, you'll see two slides, and financials are always sort of challenging when it comes to presentations, because there's a lot of numbers, and you try and figure out what's the best way to do it. But this slide is essentially your TIF. So this is what we project will be generated from overall. This does not include refunds back to the taxing authorities or anything like that yet. This is what we project will come in terms of tax increment revenue, and what the general expenses look like. Your administration, your operations, your projects, and your programs moving forward over 5 years. That will show you, the next thing you'll see is a debt service line. So what we did is we asked the financial advisor to take a look at this, look at that projected TIF generation and what could be supported in a loan or a bond. He was conservative. He looked at a 1.75 and a 2.0 debt coverage ratio, and I believe about a 5.5% on the loan. Obviously, when we go to market, we're going to be trying to encourage, more favorable terms that could increase your capacity. But the estimates are, and we would do this in one authorization, but we're talking about a 5 or 6 year period, and so it would be drawn down in 2 tranches, and that's how we looked at the capacity. Your capacity on your first tranche would be about $62 million. 3 years later, because again, you only want to draw down what you're going to spend in a 2 to 3 year time frame. You would do a second tranche, which would be about $27 million. So we're talking about $90 million overall to be able to draw down. And so the debt service lines that you see here, the first one starting at 5.9 million, and then 3 years later, you'll see an additional 2.8. That's the debt service to service those two amounts that are the working amounts we've been working on. So you'll see the total debt service, and then you'll see the balance of your tax increment revenue that's left after debt service. And you will see that at the end of the 5 years, that balance goes up to 69 million. Now, you're going to have projects and other things that you need to service and need to do, and you're going to see that on the next slide. But that's your TIF revenue in and your TIF revenue out, and this is what's left. Because you're going to have to, not tonight, but when it comes time to do the loan and time to do your budgets, you're going to have to make decisions on, okay, what's going into the loan and what are we going to pay from budget as we move forward. Because your projects total more than the 90 million you're going to be able to go out to debt for.
So how much can we borrow based on this in terms of the bonds?
90 million
90
in two
million.
tranches. The first one
Okay.
would be 62, and then the
62
second one,
and
3 years
30,
later, would be
20-something.
27. And you'll see that on the top line of the next sheet.
And if I could just ask a question too, Chairman, with that 62 million, what is the CRA's, I guess, how much are we budgeting to pay back that loan every year? Is that the,
It's on the first sheet of the numbers, so you'll see that it's close to $6 million. Our debt
so
service,
services?
Debt-
Yeah.
Yeah.
debt
So yeah, I just
services.
wanted to clarify that so that people know that this
Yes.
is the money that we'll be paying back on that loan.
right,
that
it's a
we're-
loan and that's our payment on that, that's our loan
loan.
payment on
Yeah,
an
our loan
annual
payment,
basis.
Exactly.
Yes, okay.
Mm-hmm.
Is that it?
There's
Mr.
one more
Carlin?
slide. So what we then did is because the first slide, we wanted to focus just on the tax increment revenue that comes in and what goes out and what's your balance there.
And that's based on our financials today, correct? Like as of, so
This
like, let's
is-
say when we recalculate, when we do our interlocal and the county says, hey, we want to give us more back, you know,
How does, yeah.
yeah, that number would then change.
It will change. This is what guides us towards our negotiations with the county.
Correct.
And knowing where you have the ability to move. We based our projections, we looked at your current budget, the values that you have, that you got from the county. We looked at property that's sold in the last year that will reset. We looked at new construction, and we looked at just a 3% increase in the balance of the properties in their value. So hopefully it comes in even higher. And then we use that to establish our new property values to project forward. So in addition to the tax increment revenue that comes in and then goes out, which leaves a balance, sorry, I'm already on that slide. You'll see the two tranches for the loan that come in, the 62 million and then the 27 million. And so you'll see your total revenue, call it loan revenue, your fund balance there, and how that,
29.
That's the 26
Will
million or
change.
the 29 million?
62 and 29 million.
62 and 29. And then you'll see what we included are your obligations. You'll see
That's what
your
I'm looking at.
your infrastructure grants that you have awarded. And then you'll see right now, and we will be adjusting this for the May 9th meeting, you'll see our estimates
Okay.
for the cost of your priority projects.
And just to be clear, these are the current obligations at the current rates, so
So
these
we
don't
need to be
include any.
careful in ways is moving forward when we are getting these obligations, looking at this in terms of.
Correct.
So we have money now,
Correct.
or potentially we could borrow, but moving forward, when we are approving these, so we just need to keep that in mind.
Absolutely, because this
Okay.
does not account for anything that has not yet
That
been
has not
approved by
been-
the, by the board, so I just want to be
you
clear on
wanna
that
go-
point.
Okay.
And,
All right.
and you'll see, we've got placeholders in for the priority projects, but we don't know actually yet when those dollars, when those,
Got it.
they'll be needed. So we'll be refining some of that going forward, especially as we go for, coming back for the approval for the loan, we'll need to have that worked out, but we don't need that yet for the plan. But what you see is you have existing obligations in your infrastructure grants, and you have the priority projects that you want to do. You'll see on the total, the fund balance, you'll see that comes off the loan. That will show you where the loan doesn't cover all of the obligations and all of the priority projects. The line below it combines the loan balance and what was left over from the TIF, and you see what's left over, which is how we get to figuring out what's our capacity in dealing with the county and what that give back can be. But it does show you that there's enough TIF to cover your obligations and your grants and your priority projects. And be able to have your negotiations on your interlocal.
So
Our
are we-
current obligation, I like the word
Your
current,
current
because I just want to
obligation.
make sure that the board understands anything that has not yet been approved is not a part of this calculation. So if you've not approved it before
Correct.
today, it's not in this calculation.
We got it.
So-
So, go ahead, go ahead.
I'm sorry. I did have a question. So when we're looking, the first question is, should we include more priority projects so that when we do go out, we can say, hey, you know, these are projects? Oh, I know, I just saw your face. No, I just want to make the case, the need for more money, right?
Jesus.
But then two, what do we have tied up? Like, do we know that total number, like how much we have tied up? I know the numbers are here, but like just a general number, like let's say it's 50 million that we have tied up. And we know that with this, you know, if we get the 62 million, we kind of know that we have like 12 million plus another 27, 3 years later to kind of, you know, budget for it. Like,
I think when it comes to adding the stuff, you know, I think we need to move into our testing of the different methodologies that we're going to have with the county and see where that looks and what's reasonable in terms of their expectations, as well as the conversations with the city on the city side, because obviously it's not just the county. We've got to work with the city on the TIF methodology there as well. And so I think that as we understand what the expectations of those taxing authorities might be, and we get there, then we can come back and see what's left. And that will show you what's your additional capacity. Now, you don't want to obligate all of your additional capacity necessarily in priority projects, because things are going to change. Markets and conditions are going to change, and you're going to need to respond to that. And you want to make sure that you have the ability to do that as well. So you don't want to tie it all up. You know, you want to have some available to encumber as needed in a response.
okay. No, I was just looking at it, like, for instance, I know Scott's not here, but you're here? Okay. Like, I know, for instance, we have community center, like, we have an obligation in the third year, to discuss whether or not we want to acquire the Wildcat. Wouldn't it be, is that the time where we can have that discussion to make sure that we have
That's
the
included.
10.5, available so
And
that we
that's-
can purchase it?
Yes, and
So
that's,
this is where we can.
that's
okay.
one of the additional considerations we're thinking about in here is how we tweak that priority project for the acquisition of the Wildcat Center.
Okay.
Yes.
I just wanted to make sure, because that ties
that
up
the-
money on the city side.
Yes.
Is that the Scott Galvin Center?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah,
Scott
thank
Galvin
you.
Center, my mistake.
I'm surprised you
Keep on hearing Wildcat Center.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
I'm not in the mood tonight, so you know it's all good. You can call it the Joe Celestin Center if you want to. I don't care tonight.
No, I just want to make sure
the
that we
Wild
take into
Scott
consideration to make sure that in that line item for community center, I only see, what, is that 1 million, or in total is 5 million?
Right,
Like,
and this-
we know that number.
And this was
so-
prepared working off of the numbers that were in the resolution that was originally prepared for the
Okay.
priority projects. We'll be adjusting that after this meeting
Okay,
with the other conversations that you've had.
okay. Yeah, we'll
Okay.
have some conversations.
We have to go. We have less than 5 minutes before we start the regular city council meeting. Any question, board members, for Mr. Crowder? Okay, hearing none. Awesome. So I guess we'll talk before now, and I guess we have the deadline. Executive director, if you can make it real quick, and then we get into public comments. Well, before, let's just kind of switch out of the agenda to see. Public comments is now open on the agenda, and then we'll go to the executive director report and the attorney report. Public comments is still open, and public comments is closed. Thank you, Madam Executive Director. Go ahead.
No report tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Attorney.
No report tonight.
Can I hear
Move to adjourn.
a second? Thank you. I'll see you guys in 10 minutes. Thank you.
All in favor to adjourn? I guess all of them.